I'm David Scandura,
I'm Justice Burkett.
and today we're here to find out, is Hellbound, Hellraiser 2, the greatest movie ever made?
We have eternity to know your flesh.
Welcome to the greatest movie ever made, the show where we watch a movie and tell you if it's the greatest movie ever made.
We have such sights to show you.
Movie that is so thoroughly entertaining and compelling that while you're watching it, it's the only thing that matters in the world.
You're doing like a smooth radio
I don't
voice.
know where this came from.
It's very like it just sounds like you're giving people like life advice. It sounds like Delilah. Delilah. Oh.
No.
It's just she's like a it's sort of like a Dear Abby thing, but on the radio. Where like people call in usually with like romantic relationship advice or questions, and she gives them advice. And your voice was reminding me of the sultry tones of like a radio relationship advice person. I don't fucking know.
My advice is if you find a Rubik's Cube from Satan, just don't pick that shit up. You don't need that kind of bullshit in your life.
Don't solve the devil's Rubik's Cube, apparently.
I'm David Scandura, your host and number one Chatterer fan, and I am joined as always by my co-host and number one Butterball fan, Justice Burkett.
That's fucking right, dog. Butterball is my favorite guy in any horror movie. Like, he's just... I love the design so much. I love that he's a big fat guy with like 8 chins and sharp teeth, and the real, because obviously he has the Cenobite thing that they all have where he's in like S&M gear.
Yeah.
But the fucking cherry on top of the design cake that is Butterball is those fucking sunglasses. And we see in the first movie and in the previously on Hellraiser segment in this movie, the clip from the first movie of him taking those sunglasses off and his eyes are just stitched shut underneath. And I'm like, that is hysterical. Because that means he's only wearing those for the aesthetic. He doesn't have eyes. It's literally only... And he looks horrifying and disgusting, so he's not trying to cover up his stitched up eyes, because the Cenobites have no qualms about showing off their kind of hideousness to their human victims. So he just thinks those shades look cool.
One in fact might say that they really enjoy doing that. That's kind of their whole thing.
It's one of their favorite things to do, is to show up and kind of stand there and explain that they are torture demons from another dimension, and then do very little torturing in the first 2 of these films, which are the only ones in the franchise I've seen.
I like that Chatterer doesn't have eyes in the first one. He's another eyeless Cenobite.
Yeah.
And then in this one they give him eyes, and I guess it was because the actor wanted to see. And like, sure, I get it, but I don't like Chatterer with eyes.
Yeah, he's cooler without the eyes. I do love all the close-ups of his teeth, though, which I think there's some of those in the first movie, and then this movie also has a few close-ups of just the mouth with the teeth going.
Yeah.
And I'm like, oh, anytime we're seeing those in close-up, it's very, very fun.
Yeah.
It's kind of fucked up that we have Pinhead, also called the Hell Priest, right?
Mm-hmm.
Chatterer has a cool name. Butterball has a fun name. The other one is female Cenobite.
It's just the girl one.
Yes, that's very sexist that she doesn't get a cool name. It's literally like the 3 guy Cenobites all have fun names that are in some way related to their appearance. And then female Cenobite.
They let a girl into the club.
It seems
She was a diversity hire.
I guess so. She's got that throat slit or something. You could call her like a throat vagina Cenobite or something. Because it kind of looks like that.
Yeah.
But no, instead she's just female Cenobite. I'm like, come on, guys. She could be like needle cheek Cenobite or something shit. Needle face. Well, needle face is too close to Pinhead. But she does kind of have needles in her face, is what I'm saying. Yeah. Anyway.
Justice, before we get to today's movie.
Yeah.
Which, of course, is Hellbound, Hellraiser 2.
Hellbound, Hellraiser 2. Yes.
How are you doing?
I'm doing weird.
Is that a good weird or a bad weird?
Okay, so like, I have a creative project coming up now very soon that I'm very excited for, which we might as well just tell the listeners what it is, because we'll probably be talking about this for the next 2 months of episodes in the check-ins. But I'm directing a play. David is going to be in the play that I am directing.
Oh shit, am I?
Yes, you are aware of this.
Oh, okay.
The casting director did make you aware of this. So yeah, that's coming up soon, and I'm excited for it. And like, I'm really amped to get started on that creative project. So that's like good. But the reason I'm weird is because there's also been a lot of like stressful and bad this week. Like, I just feel like I am trapped in a mountain of work so large that I will never be able to emerge from it. So there's that. And also, I guess I just found out like an hour or so before this record that I apparently lost my driver's license. So I went to a wedding last night, and there was a cash bar, and I took out my ID to use it at the bar, and then they didn't actually end up IDing me, and I shoved it in my pocket. Guess it must have fallen out at some point, because I've looked everywhere and it is fucking nowhere. So that's just like immediately going into this record, I was like, that's going to be a huge fucking headache. I'm going to have to call the DMV, get the old one canceled, get it one reissued. But before or simultaneous to all of that, I also have to call that wedding venue and see if they have it, you know? And it's just that thing of like, because I made this one like very stupid decision to like put it in my pocket instead of back in my wallet where it usually goes, now this has generated even more work for me to do.
Yeah.
And it's very annoying.
The amount of stupid 5-second mistakes that I've made in my life that have then led to just massive headaches are innumerable beyond counting.
Yeah.
There are not more stars in the sky than there are dumbass things that I've done.
Yeah, something we have in common, right? Like that. This is me as well, where it's like I've locked my keys in my car multiple times. I've run out of gas multiple times. I've lost keys, wallet. This is not the first time I've lost a driver's license. You know, like it's shit like that where it's like little moments of negligence, right? Putting off getting gas like one more trip, and then suddenly my whole day is running out of gas. You know, like now I'm like, great, this week is going to be the dealing with my lost driver's license week now, because I made like one very momentary negligent move of like just putting it in the wrong pocket or whatever, and it's very annoying. So so that's why I'm weird. I have some stuff that I'm looking forward to that I'm excited about, but also there's just been like a lot of little annoyances and a lot of stress this week. But overall, I'm fine. Nothing is catastrophically wrong. How are you, David?
I'm all right.
Yeah. Cool.
Yeah. That's it.
Sometimes it's all right for that to be it.
I got fucking trying to take care of my life and my car that needs $3,000 worth of work done on it, which I guess to some people doesn't sound like a lot. To me, it feels like a lot.
That's a lot.
Because I also have $3,000 of credit card debt that I need to pay off.
Yeah.
Anyway, so I dropped about $500 on getting new tires, for, getting the other two tires replaced, which was thankfully it was like I decided to just do it and not wait until I had to, not wait until I was stranded on the side of the road somewhere. So
yeah,
I'm glad that I decided to do that today, but it's just a pain.
Yeah.
Being an adult is an expensive thing.
Yeah, owning a vehicle is expensive,
yeah.
But we live in America where unless you live in like a select handful of cities, you must own one in order to live your life. Because we've rendered public transportation so underfunded that it's essentially useless, and we also have built things very far apart from each other for some fucking reason in this country. Yeah, it's annoying. Owning a car is expensive and annoying.
Mm-hmm. But otherwise, I'm okay, I guess.
Yeah.
I'm looking forward to doing this play that I just learned 5 minutes ago that I'm going to be a part of.
You did audition for it and accept an offer and have been talking to me about the script. Just to be clear.
Okay. I saw the TV Glow.
Yes, yeah, that's our media recommendation.
Yeah, I don't really have anything else to talk about.
Yeah.
But
Really,
that movie's fucking good.
really fucking good movie. I really, really enjoyed it. I thought it was very inventive, and it made me feel a lot of things. And go see it if you haven't.
Yes.
Yeah.
All right, let's talk about some fucking Hellraiser.
All right.
Some
The energy is weird.
Hellraiser. Am I making the energy weird?
I think I'm making the energy weird. Maybe we're both making the energy weird. The energy is weird in the room today, and I think it's because I feel exhausted. Sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off right as you were about to
well, it's
introduce
fine. I think it's also just this is my weekly socialization and enrichment time.
Yeah.
Which is coming over to my friend's house to record a podcast. And,
Yeah, that's right.
And leaving my cage.
Yeah.
So Hellraiser.
Yes. Hellbound, Hellraiser 2.
Directed by Tony Randel.
Yes.
Can I just say,
Yes.
love a subtitle main title too.
I do too. I think that's one of the best ways to title a sequel. Is the subtitle main title and then whatever number of the franchise it is.
Yeah. The only ones that I can think of other than this are Rambo: First Blood Part 2.
Yeah.
And The Lost World: Jurassic Park.
Yeah.
But I think
It
we need
should
more
be The
of
Lost World: Jurassic Park 2.
Yeah.
That would be better.
That would be better. That would be better, Steven Spielberg.
Yeah. Take notes, Steven, on your movie that has been out for 3 decades. So Hellraiser.
Talk to me about Hellraiser.
Yeah. So first of all, you kind of picked this movie. You put it on our episodes list.
You bet I did.
So we'll get into your history with Hellraiser and your thoughts on the franchise in a second. But since you asked me first, and I have probably less to say because I've seen fewer Hellraiser movies, I have seen this movie and the first one. And for both movies, the first time I watched it, I was like, does Hellraiser suck shit? was sort of my reaction to both movies. I watched Hellraiser, the first Hellraiser, when I was working my way through a lot of the horror classics, right as I was first getting into horror, right? So the Podmaster and I were like watching all of the like first franchise entries in the major franchises, and that being one of them. We watched Hellraiser, and the Podmaster, Countess Pod, resonated with the first Hellraiser movie way more than I did. Like, she really liked that movie, and I was like, something about it didn't hit for me, and I was like, I kind of didn't like it. I kind of thought it was bad. And I struggled with it for a while, and then maybe like the third or fourth time, it clicked. Oh, I thought this movie was serious, and this movie is fucking stupid. And once that clicked for me, where I was like, oh, Hellraiser's it's not Halloween or the Texas Chainsaw Massacre tone. It is Nightmare on Elm Street tone, where it's campy and stupid, and it's not supposed to make sense, and you're not supposed to take it seriously. I was like, oh, I got it. Now I get it, right? And I enjoyed it a lot more after I had that revelation. So then I watched the second one and sort of had a similar reaction, where I was like, this isn't really working for me. The tone of this thing feels a little bit confused. And I think I wanted to like the movie more than I actually liked it. And that was like frustrating me about it. And that was the first time that I saw Hellraiser 2, and I had not revisited it until this record. Okay. So like that's kind of where I'm at with these things, is like I gained some appreciation for the first one. It's still not one of my favorites. I would say I like the first one fine, maybe more than fine. I really appreciate the practical effects work and all that stuff. And Clive Barker was a first-time director when he directed it, and I think for someone's first movie, it is quite impressive. Second one, first watch, I was kind of like, is this a dud? Does this suck shit? And then I watched it again this week, and we'll talk about how I felt about it this time.
Okay.
David, tell me about Hellraiser.
So I kind of fucking love Hellraiser.
Yeah.
Which you said, like, does Hellraiser suck shit? And that was the thing you were grappling with. I think a lot of people in the horror community would probably say that Hellraiser sucks shit.
Yeah.
Because among the slasher franchises, the 80s slasher franchises, Hellraiser, I think, is kind of the black sheep of the big ones.
Yeah.
And Hellraiser's kind of barely a slasher movie, honestly.
Yeah.
It's not really until like Hellraiser 3 where it's like, okay, we're actually just going to make this a slasher movie now. That all being said, I really gravitated toward the first Hellraiser the first time I saw it. And I think what really connected with me were the psychosexual themes that Clive Barker explored in that movie. Of course, he was a gay man, living in the 80s during the AIDS crisis, and that's where a lot of the imagery, especially with like the bondage gear and shit like that, and the themes came from. For me, I connected with that movie more as a cisgendered heterosexual white man, but still just like this thing that we do where we share our naked bodies with each other and smash them together is as pleasurable and enticing as it is also kind of horrifying and disgusting.
Yeah. And all of that stuff, I love everything you're saying. I wish the movies just did it more.
Sure.
Like, especially that first one, because that's sort of what I felt like I had been promised when I went into the first one the first time, because that's what I had heard about Hellraiser, was that stuff that you were just saying. And then I watched the movie and I was like, okay, but like anytime we're actually seeing any sex depicted in this movie, it's pretty vanilla, And I'm like, just make it grosser and kinkier, but most of the grossness in that movie I feel like comes from violence, not sex.
Yeah, that's true.
Yeah.
What I was promised from Hellraiser was this goofy looking guy named Pinhead.
Right.
Which the thing about Pinhead that I think a lot of people of our generation, kids in the 90s, have is, and I've heard many people say this on podcasts, my brother has said it, I've had this experience too, is they saw their first exposure to Hellraiser was seeing a VHS copy of Hellraiser in Blockbuster or something, and seeing Pinhead on the cover. And to a 90s kid, I think there was something about Jason and Freddy that, maybe they're scary, but they're also a little bit silly, and you can kind of, the hockey mask and the hat and the sweater and stuff like that, and those are all like clearly identifiable, tangible, real world things that a kid can identify with, so that in a way makes them less scary.
Yeah.
Where Pinhead is just this completely strange, otherworldly presence on that Hellraiser VHS box cover.
Yes.
And the thing that the Hellraiser movies consistently do, which I found out when I became a sort of Hellraiser fan, which means I've seen 7 Hellraiser movies.
That's 5 more than me.
Is that the Hellraiser movies consistently just don't care about Pinhead.
Yeah. Which is interesting.
And Clive Barker, Clive Barker, that was his kind of concept for the first one. He was like, he identified Julia and Frank as the villains of those movies, and Pinhead's just a guy.
Yeah.
But everyone gravitated toward Pinhead.
Yeah, because he's got the look.
He's got the look.
He's dripped out.
He's got the lines.
Yes. Time to play.
So I quite like, I love the first Hellraiser. I love Hellraiser 2. Hellraiser 3 is a good bit of fun. Hellraiser 4 is a good bit of fun. I've seen a couple of the direct-to-video, ones that are basically just like rip-off 7 scripts that they called Doug Bradley onto set for 5 minutes to shoot his scenes at the end.
Yep.
And then the remake that I think Hulu put out a couple years ago, directed by David Bruckner, is really, really good too.
I do want to watch that one because having seen the trailers of the remake one, I'm like, I think this is the tone I've always wanted from a Hellraiser movie. And granted, I haven't seen the movie, so I don't know if this is true or not. But just watching the trailer, I'm like, yeah, this is kind of what I want a movie about Cenobites and fucking pleasure and pain and all that stuff. I kind of want it to have this dark, moody atmosphere and feel less like a TV movie, like a soap opera, which to me is very much how the first Hellraiser and even this movie feel at points, where I'm like, it feels like I am now watching Days of Our Lives for a second here, just visual, like the aesthetic and occasionally the music in a weird way. There is like a really good like main theme in this movie, but like some of the music I'm like, I feel like this could be daytime drama right now.
I feel like the Hellraiser main theme is one of my favorite horror movie themes or slasher movie themes. It's like,
it is good.
It's like instantly recognizable to me. Couldn't tell you dick about any of the other music, any of the other music that's in these movies at all.
Yeah.
So that's I guess that goes to show.
Yeah.
Uh,
And I also
prove your
think, like,
point.
the other thing that I was kind of latching onto that was reminding me of like soap operas, both in the first movie and in this one a little bit, is sometimes some of the performances, although we'll get into it, I think that might be a directing issue, not a actor issue. And also the like production values. I just sometimes think these first couple movies, and I haven't seen any of the future ones, are shot somewhat poorly. Which, like, the first one, it's like, yeah, it was Clive Barker's first time behind a camera. You can't fault him too much.
I watched both of them last night.
Yeah.
And I gotta say that first one is really, really well directed.
Yeah.
And well shot. And I think there's points where that soap opera-esque aesthetic kind of sneaks in there. I'm not necessarily sure why. But I think that first one is like pretty slick and well directed and well shot and like very patient and well thought out in terms of how Clive Barker's planning the shots and editing and stuff like that. So let's just talk about Hellbound.
Yeah, we'll talk about Hellbound, Hellraiser 2. Yeah. So we open actually with a very good shot, because we were just I was just kind of shit talking some of the cinematography in this movie. But the first shot is this like arched room with this guy sitting cross-legged on the floor solving one of the puzzle boxes, and the way he's framed in the shot and the room that he's in, all looks very nice.
Yes. There's
a lot of nice film grain because this was shot on film. It's just very nice to look at. He solves this box, the room gets all dark. That's kind of a cool effect, and it looks very beautiful. So credit where credit is due. I know I was just shit talking some of how this movie looks. There are moments like this that look very good.
This actually isn't you said the first shot of the movie. This is the first shot of the movie after we have previously on
Hellraiser. It is literally like you are watching a second part of a Buffy the Vampire Slayer 2-parter season finale.
But you know what? I get to see Frank get ripped apart again by those chains, and I'm happy.
Yeah. Yes. So I do have an issue with, because this is how we open the movie, is just flashbacks to it literally just flashes of the first movie summarizing it for you. And then for the next 25 minutes of this movie, we continue summarizing the first movie, where characters keep telling each other, multiple characters keep telling multiple other characters the plot of Hellraiser 1. And it's like, first of all, we just had a montage where we saw it. And second of all, I saw the fucking first Hellraiser, you guys. Like, I do not need 25 minutes of this 100-minute movie being rehashing a movie I have seen.
I think you're being hyperbolic.
I don't think I am.
There's like a minute of this opening, and then we get the main titles, and then Doug Bradley's playing with the puzzle box and all that shit.
Yeah.
And then Kirsty does again do a previously on Hellraiser, where she summarizes the plot of the movie to the doctor. And I think that's it. I think in total it's like 6 minutes.
The cop also is like saying the plot points to the doctors, or the doctors are saying it to the cop, one or the other, right? There's moments where and then when like they go and get the mattress, like they're talking about shit that happened in the first. They're like, oh yeah, that girl here, like her fucking dad died, and like that's what's going on here. And I'm like, I know. Just show me these guys. Give me one shot of these guys picking up the mattress, moving it, and being like, this is going into evidence. That's it. You don't need to tell me anything else that happened in this house. I fucking know what happened in the house. I think it's sprinkled throughout a lot of these scenes. It's not the focus of these scenes, but there is a lot of extraneous dialogue that is just rehashing details of the first film's plot. I think.
Okay.
That was my impression of this. But anyway.
But yeah, we see Doug Bradley, who plays Pinhead,
yes,
in a military uniform, and he's playing with the box, the lament configuration.
Yes, Satan's Rubik's cube, as we called it.
And then he gets Cenobited.
Cenobite.
The chains shoot out of it. I love the transition where he screams, it freezes on his open mouth, then the camera pushes into his open mouth.
Yeah,
and then there's like clouds where he's like transported to hell, and then we actually see his transformation, which is a really cool sequence.
Yes, I do really like this sequence where you see like the pins being like hammered into his head and shit. Like it's all I like the Cenobite transformation here. I also like the Cenobiting that happens later in the movie.
Yeah.
Like those are some of the highlights of the movie for me. Also, after this happens, we then get the title card, Hellbound, Hellraiser 2. But that's our second title card of the movie, because
Right.
when they do the
Right.
recap of the first Hellraiser, the title card that comes up is just Hellraiser. And I'm like, I don't know that I've ever seen a movie that uses two different title cards with different titles. Like, it's to the point where I'm like, if you had Hellraiser and Hellraiser 2 on DVD and you put in Hellraiser 2, you might open it up and check the disc and make sure that you would put in the right movie when that Hellraiser title card comes up. Anyway, but yeah. So yes, Hellbound: Hellraiser Part 2 pops up on screen. We get the sweeping score. Kirsty's in a mental hospital, a psychiatric hospital, because of all the insane, horrible shit that she witnessed in the first film.
And that you witnessed in the minute intro to this movie.
Yes.
And you will hear repeated again in a few minutes.
Yes.
Yeah, so she wakes up in a psych ward. Meanwhile, like, the cops are investigating the house. I do like this bit where there's a cop up in not the attic, but the room where all of the Hellraiser-ing was happening in the last movie. And he finds a dead body with maggots on it, and then another body falls out of the closet, and he just whips around and empties his revolver into it.
Yes,
That
which
is very
I
fun.
love him shooting the shit out of this skeleton and just blowing its head up. And then like in the next scene with this cop, there's like another cop there, and they're like talking about like, oh, the mattress is the only evidence that we can move out of here or whatever. And he's like, we couldn't recover anything else because there was like an accident or whatever. And he's like looking at the other cop being like, you stupid bitch.
Because fucking Jimmy got a little trigger happy.
The maggot covered body is like sort of in this like woven wicker basket, and it was reminding me a lot of Belial's basket from Basket Case. Which obviously,
oh man,
obviously you know where I'm going with this.
I know where you're going with this.
Just I immediately started imagining what a Basket Case v Hellraiser movie would be like, where it's like maybe Belial gets the lament configuration, or somebody else gets the like Belial's like brother. Maybe he uses the lament configuration, and so the Cenobites are trying to get his brother, and Belial has to like protect his brother and battle the Cenobites.
I would watch the fuck out of that.
And I think that's what I want from this franchise. I'm like, if you're gonna go stupid enough that I can't engage with this as like a dark, moody, atmospheric horror movie, then go full stupid.
That Hellraiser 3 and Hellraiser 4, my friend.
And maybe it'll be really interesting if I continue watching Hellraiser movies to see if the dumber they get, the more I like this franchise. But yeah, I was just thinking about Belial like fucking on Chatterer's back.
I think Belial and Chatterer would team up.
Chatterer,
they have a similar vibe.
He sees a kindred spirit in Belial. Switches teams. Or maybe it's like a twist where it's like initially Belial is fighting the OG 4 Cenobites, but then like Dr. Chenard shows up, and the OG 4 Cenobites have to team up with Belial to take on Chenard. Anyway,
this is basically where we are as we're introduced to Dr. Chenard performing brain surgery, and I love the movie just immediately letting you know that this guy's fucking nuts because he's a brain surgeon monologuing dramatically about the brain while performing brain surgery.
This is basically the exact same character as the guy from Reanimator. I'm trying to remember the character's name, but like the main villain in Reanimator,
Yeah.
right? Who's like the neurosurgeon. It's the same guy. He's like a mad scientist who's obsessed with the human brain.
Yeah, the mind is a labyrinth, and
Yeah.
the corridors are yet unexplored. And
Yes.
can you hand me the scalpel, please?
Yes. And much like the doctor from Reanimator, this guy is also a huge sex freak.
Oh, sure.
And that's what he's doing in his off hours, right?
He's also moonlighting as a Cenobite aficionado.
Yes, yeah, because he's a sex freak. This is all, I think, the purpose of all of his Cenobite research is to just have the biggest nut anyone's ever had. Because I think that's why you solve the lament configuration.
Right. That's why Frank did it.
Right,
in the first one.
It's basically just like, well, I've tried everything else. Time for me to nut so hard I die and become a demon. So he's got a secret life of Cenobite research going on, and he does he's on the phone with the cops or whoever.
Yeah, the cops who have the mattress.
And he's like, take it to my house. No, don't take it to evidence. Just leave it in my office. It's fine. I'm a doctor at this mental hospital, and I can make that call for some reason. Which is very interesting. So we already are getting vibes here really early in the movie that he's nefarious and is going to be up to some shit.
Yeah.
And Kirsty is here telling Dr. Chenard's like medical student Kyle. Yeah.
Kyle, played by William Hope, who I've only the only other thing I've seen him in is Aliens.
Yeah. And is not a character in this movie.
You think he's gonna be?
He seems like he's gonna be. It's like, oh wow, this is Kirsty's new love interest, Kyle.
Yeah.
Which is funny because they do say that her boyfriend from the first movie is alive and fine.
Yeah.
And it just is never referenced past that point and doesn't come back in the movie.
There's one other thing. We have to talk about the end of Hellraiser just for a second here.
Yeah. Yes.
We're not going to summarize it like the movie does because we're not that stupid. The thing.
What if we spent the first 25 minutes of this podcast summarizing Hellraiser 1?
The thing about the ending of Hellraiser that never comes back that I just want to know what's happening with that is the homeless guy that turns into the bone dragon who just flies off.
That was the moment. Like the third or fourth time I saw Hellraiser, where I was like, "Oh, this movie's good because a homeless guy turned into a bone dragon."
Yeah, Justice.
And I was like, the first few times I watched it, I was like, "This seems out of sync with the rest of the movie's tone because it's exploring some really dark, interesting themes." And then a guy turns into a fucking bone dragon, and I was like, on that watch, I was like, "Oh yeah." The guy turning into a bone dragon is in keeping with the rest of the movie's tone. I was trying to apply a seriousness to this movie that it itself is not in possession of.
See, and I think there is a degree of seriousness to the first Hellraiser. Otherwise, I don't think I would have connected it in the way that I did in terms of like the psychosexual stuff. The other thing is just like Clive Barker just kind of wants to have... I feel like it's Clive Barker being like, this is maybe my one chance to make a movie.
Right.
Let's just throw everything in here.
Yeah.
And we're going to do some weird, disgusting shit that doesn't make sense. We're going to have a bone dragon. We're also going to have this really interesting, compelling story.
Yes. That
about
Muppet that runs down at them in the hallway.
Yeah, we're gonna have a Muppet that climbs down a hallway. We're gonna have some BDSM demons. Let's just throw it all in.
Yes, incest, which this movie continues to have.
But I want to know what's going on with the bone dragon.
Yeah.
I think the bone dragon I think there's a separate movie where the bone dragon flew to another town, and the town now has to contend with the bone dragon.
And it took the lament configuration. So presumably, well, I think at the end of that first movie, we do see that the lament configuration has like re-entered the world of commerce. I think it's being sold to someone, maybe.
Yeah, and there's multiple ones we see in Chenard's his Cenobite studying room at his house here. Yeah. So like, there's multiple ones.
But maybe you're right. Maybe the bone dragon is just like, I don't know, battling Godzilla somewhere. Anyway, so unfortunately we do not get any updates on the bone dragon, even from Kirsty.
I'm 6.
She doesn't even mention the bone dragon to Kyle.
She doesn't.
I'm like, I might bring that up. Be like, there were these demons and all this stuff, and then right before I was admitted to the psychiatric hospital, a homeless man turned into a dragon made of bones.
And the homeless guy isn't at all connected to the rest of the story.
Yeah, so from her perspective, it maybe wasn't even related.
There's this creepy homeless guy that eats bugs that I keep seeing, and then he picked up the puzzle box and turned into a bone dragon. Don't know what that's about.
What if the bone dragon isn't related? And Clive Barker was just like, no, yeah, that's just that guy can just do that. It's not about the Cenobites at all. Yeah. So anyway, Kirsty is like, she's got a bad feeling about the whole situation. Basically, she and Kyle has overheard Dr. Chenard saying, bring that mattress to my office.
Mm-hmm.
So now that Kyle knows Kirsty's whole story, he's kind of got a bad feeling about stuff too. And he sneaks into Chenard's house.
Yeah.
Right? Is kind of the next main thing that happens.
Yeah, Kirsty also has a vision of who she thinks is her father.
David, I have a question for you.
Yeah.
Would you recognize your own father without any skin?
I don't know.
I really
don't know.
I really don't think I would. She seems so sure that this is her dad, like immediately. She's like, Daddy? And I'm like, that is a human being with no skin. I can't even tell if that's a man or a woman, right? Like, well, we can't. Okay,
well,
yeah.
Based on
yes,
based on Julia in this movie, I think I could definitely tell.
Correct. So never mind.
But
I don't think I would be able to tell that a skinless man was my father, because one of the main ways I recognize my dad on sight is his face. Which this guy does not have.
Yeah.
So it does seem strange to me that she's immediately so sure. And spoiler alert, ends up being wrong, because it's like, yeah, you can't recognize your dad when he doesn't have any fucking skin. But yes, so
he writes in the wall in blood, I am in hell, please help me. It's cool,
yes.
cool image.
It's a cool image. I am in hell, help me is a cool sort of striking thing to see written on a wall in blood. Yeah, it's this is another moment of this movie that I really like.
Mm-hmm.
I like the sinister shot of the radiator before she notices him in the corner too.
I also like that she rubs some of the blood on her lips.
Not sure what that's about, but yeah.
You're right. I'm not sure what that's about, but I was like,
yeah,
that's fun.
Taking a little taste of it. Ah, yes, this tastes like my father's blood. Clearly, it must have been him. It's like when in crime shows, cops will find drugs or whatever, and they'll put a little bit of it in their mouth or whatever, and be like, ah, yes, heroin.
There's also a scene here where we realize that Chenard is keeping the most the most severe cases in this hospital, basically in the basement in rubber rooms,
right.
And we get a scene where he does his rounds, and
this is also where we maybe meet Tiffany, or no, we meet Tiffany.
We meet Tiffany in here somewhere.
Yeah, but
Tiffany's she's silent and she likes puzzles.
She's a magic child who solves puzzles.
Yeah,
and doesn't speak. Yes.
Yeah. And the only reason I mentioned that he has people in the basement is I think that's where all the corpses come from.
Oh,
in the part of this movie where we discover that Chenard has suddenly acquired a bunch of people.
Okay, so I read that differently. I read that he was bringing live people to Julia the exact same way that she did for Frank in the first movie, and that she was killing them, not that he was bringing her corpses.
No, I mean, what I mean is, I think he was...
Oh, he's bringing the patients.
I think he was bringing the patients.
Yeah,
I think he was
yeah.
We're going to have a field trip, and then he loaded them into the van and drove them home.
He's like, come along, everyone. We're going to my house. Come up here into my murder act.
That was the only explanation that I had for him suddenly having a dozen people hanging from chains.
He just has them lined up out the door, single file, and it's just your turn, the doctor will see you now. She just sticks her hand in the back of their head.
We're jumping around so much, but
it's fine.
Yeah, Kyle goes to Chenard's house and discovers that he's been researching all this weird Cenobite shit that he overheard from Kirsty. Chenard shows up with a patient who is hallucinating that he has bugs all over him, so he scratches himself maniacally. So Kyle just hides behind some drapes.
Yep. And David, this is easily my favorite scene in the first hour of this movie.
Yeah, it's a good one.
This scene fucking rocks. I know I've been sort of talking a little critically about this movie, right? Not universally praising it so far, but moments like this really, really fucking work for me in this movie. I love Chenard because basically he like puts this guy on the bloody mattress that he had delivered to his house. And he just takes out a straight razor and he looks hesitant for a second. He's like, am I really doing this? And then he's like, yeah, I'm really doing it.
In for a penny, in for a pound.
And he just gives this psychiatric patient who's having these hallucinations a straight razor and is basically like, go to town, bud. And this guy starts fucking carving himself up.
It rules.
Yes, and you're seeing it from his perspective where there are the bugs, and this is just like a bunch of gross wound makeup covered in maggots, which looks great.
Yeah.
And then you're seeing it as it really is, which is just him carving up his own flesh. And he's screaming his head off. He's screaming, get them off me! Get them off me! Over and over and over again. And it is very disturbing. Great horror sequence, really gross, super bloody, and I fucking love it.
And then a lady without skin jumps up through the mattress and kills him.
Yes, she fucking pops out, and I love her face popping out, and she's like smiling. She's like, hello, I'm back. And she fucking wraps her arms and legs around him and just hugs him from underneath, like as she emerges from the mattress. It's really good. And then he is like, I think his hallucination about the bugs takes a backseat to being attacked by a woman with no skin, because he starts running away and starts asking Chenard to help him.
He's crawling on the floor and she's crawling after him.
Yeah.
And there's blood everywhere, which rules.
Yeah, because he's covered in his own blood from carving himself up. And a thing that is very important to note about the skinless corpses in both of the first two Hellraiser movies. Presumably there are skinless corpses in future films as well. I just haven't seen those. But an important thing to note about them is anytime there is a skinless person walking around in one of these movies, they are wet as hell. They're never a dry, skinless person.
No.
They're leaving goop everywhere.
Yeah, very goopy.
Everything they touch has like smears on it.
And I'm never exactly sure how they kill people and how they like, the whole point of this is like they're trying to get more body parts and skin back so they can pretend to be a person again.
Yeah.
I'm not exactly sure how they do it, but it seems like it has something to do with punching a hole in the back of the victim's head.
Which I don't think happens in the first movie.
There's a couple parts that seems like something like that's happening.
Okay, yeah. But in this one, it's very explicit. We see her hand go into the back of people's heads multiple times in this movie.
Yeah.
Where it's like, oh, she is just Kali Ma Shakti-daying their brain, I guess. Which is what she does to this guy.
Yeah.
When she eventually overpowers him, she does that. Chenard is, so she basically realizes that Chenard summoned her intentionally and is like, oh, you're a fucking Cenobite researcher sex freak who wants to fuck me and I can use that, right? And she's like, he wraps her up in gauze here. He wraps her up like a
he wraps her
mummy
up in gauze because we don't have the budget to do this makeup the whole time.
to show her muscle titties all the time.
So rewatching the first one, I think all the makeup for Frank is really good. There are some parts where it looks a little rubbery based on the lighting.
Yeah.
For the most part, it's really good and
Agreed.
like anatomically correct as far as I can tell.
One of my favorite phases of his makeup, by the way, is before he goes wet muscle goop mode.
Yeah.
When he's kind of like a dry, shriveled mummy in like the earlier portion of his reanimation, which is, of course, when he says, "Don't look at me," which is my favorite line from that movie and a thing that I say to my wife 15 times a week. In Frank's voice. But I really like that look, but I agree, like all of it's pretty good in that first movie.
Is it completely apropos of nothing, like you just say it, or is it in specific moments when you don't want her to look at you?
Well, sometimes, yeah, like if one of us is doing something that we think that the other one will find gross, like flossing our teeth or something, clipping our nails, we'll sometimes, like if she says, "Don't look at me," she'll just say it normal, and then I'll go, "Don't look at me," because it is a Pavlovian response when I hear those words. But then also I'll just do that when I'm like, like clipping my toenails or something that I don't want her to like actively be watching me do because it feels gross and weird. But yeah.
Okay. Just wondering.
So not apropos of nothing.
Okay. That works.
Usually there's some kind of like impetus.
So the makeup for Frank in the first movie, and even the makeup when we see him later in this movie, is really, really good.
Yeah.
And Julia's kind of looks like a skin suit.
Yeah.
And the first time I saw this movie, I had a much more negative reaction to it than I do now.
Yeah.
And I was kind of like, that sort of looks shitty. And it kind of looks like it sucks. And I think this movie probably had budgetary issues, which we'll talk about definitely when we get to the labyrinth portion of the movie. But I was looking at that skin suit last night, and I'm like, I think it's supposed to be sexy.
Yes.
I think it's supposed to be sexier than Frank.
Correct. They made a sexy muscle lady.
Yeah.
Yes.
So
she's got you can see her boobs.
She's got boobies.
And
she's slick, and it looks a lot more just kind of like they just strapped on a rubber suit rather than like actually applying makeup.
Yeah.
And I think I actually rock with it a lot.
Yeah, I really like how her makeup looks as well. I think to your point, it is maybe like a little bit less convincing and like looks a little bit cheaper potentially, but not in a way that I found detracted from the movie at all. I was like, oh, this is kind of like campy and a little silly and maybe a little cheap, but like in a way that I am fucking with, not in a way where I'm like, like this looks like shit.
Yeah,
you know, because it doesn't look like shit, to be clear.
Yeah, there's a part where Kyle sneaks out at one point during this whole thing, and there's a part where Julia goes over to Chenard, who's smoking a cigarette, and takes his cigarette out of his mouth and smokes it and blows it back in his face. And I gotta say, if a skinless woman did that to me, I might get an erection.
She also at that point is wearing one of his suits. She's wearing his white pants and suit jacket, and walks up right before the cigarette moment, walks up to a glass of white wine that he has left for her, and she just goes, "Wine." Which I love as a reaction to seeing a glass of wine from a woman who has been in hell for, it's probably only been, since Kirsty's still in the mental hospital, it's probably only been like a year at most. Probably a lot less. Well, no, they were still collecting the mattress.
Yeah, it's been a couple days.
Right.
But time probably passes differently in hell.
That's what I was going to say. It's probably felt like an eternity since she's had a glass of wine. Who knows? Maybe she was sober before. No, I think we see her drinking in that first movie. Never mind. I was just like, maybe this is what caused her to break sobriety, was going to hell. So Dr. Chenard is getting all horny for Julia here.
Yeah.
He and she is indulging this completely. And also is maybe, I don't think she's ever legitimately into him. She's just using him.
Sure.
Is the vibe. But I also think that she just likes being desired. That's sort of a thing that we know about her character from the first movie.
Yeah.
Right? Is she likes being an object of desire. She likes to sort of be worshipped by a man, you know? And so she is fully indulging this.
And she's also in a more of a dominant role than her like relationship with Frank, where she was a lot more submissive.
Yes. She's a switch, it turns out.
She's a switch. She's getting off on it.
Yeah. So they kiss here, which is gross, right? Because she's all muscly and looks all fucked up. This is after he mummy wraps her. And then she says, "Now all we need is skin."
Yeah.
Which then sets up the thing that we talked about where he's bringing her bodies.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Meanwhile, Kyle snuck off. He goes back to the asylum, walks in on Kirsty while she's showering, which is fucked up.
And this is a man who works at the hospital where she is a patient. This is extremely not okay.
And he's been standing there for a few seconds before she notices that he's there and has time to put a towel on.
Yeah. I do like, by the way, because Kyle obviously witnessed some of the stuff that we talked about with Julie and Chenard earlier.
Yeah, I think
but he pieces out like pretty much right after the guy gets murdered.
Yeah.
And I do love him as all of this crazy shit is happening, he's like hiding behind a curtain, and eventually he's like, fuck this. Like, you just see it on this actor's face where he's like, I have to get out of here. A woman is consuming a guy's life force from a hole that she punched in the back of his head. What the fuck am I still doing here? So he's coming back fresh off of that.
Yeah.
Right. And I love him. I love this exchange in this scene. Where so he has walked in on Kirsty showering, which is very inappropriate. She's in a robe. And he's basically like, get dressed. We need to fucking go now. Cause like, I just saw this crazy shit and everything that you told me before is actually true. And he has told her to get dressed. She opens the dresser in her room. It's completely empty. There are no clothes in there. And she just turns towards him and delivers one of the best cinematic shits I've ever heard. She just turns to him and goes, shit. and it goes back to him and he's like, I'll get you some clothes. He looks like so scared of her because of the venom with which she delivers that shit. It's like one of my favorite lines in the entire movie is just that one word. It's so good. And it's like legitimately good. That's a moment where I'm like, okay, this was not bad acting. And leads me into a thought that I have, which is I don't think all the acting in this movie is good. I think some of Kyle's stuff is a little weak for me. That detective at the beginning, he seems like he's trying to be a detective from he seems like he's trying to be like the detective from The Exorcist. And instead it's kind of coming off as a little low energy and mumbly to me.
Yeah.
And at times the camp of Julia's performance and Dr. Chenard's to some extent.
Oh no, they rock.
Is a little bit over the top potentially compared to some of the other performances, which this is my point. I think all the actors in this movie are good actors and that they are all giving decent performances. I think the problem was the direction, because I think a good director, a director who's good at directing actors, is able to identify like, this is a good performance and this is a good performance, but they're not gelling because they're not on the same wavelength, right? So I need to like tell one of these actors, go campier with it or go less campy with it, right? And it seems like that just wasn't happening here. So I don't think like the tone of the movie is confused, because the tone of this movie I think is maybe for me more consistent than the first Hellraisers. But I think the performances are a little uneven for me, where it's like some of these feel really grounded, like that detective, and then some of them are like high camp, like Julia. And I'm like, I wish we were either doing one or the other across the board, you know?
Well, I want to talk about Ashley Laurence, who plays Kirsty, a little bit. So the end of the first Hellraiser, she kind of becomes the main character. Like, she is ostensibly the main character. She's the final girl.
But you're following Julia and Frank a lot more than you're following
Julia's
her.
More of the main character of that first one.
Yes. Yeah.
And Kirsty doesn't really come into the fold as like the main force of the movie until the third act. Yeah. And I think Ashley Lawrence's acting is a little bit more spottier for me there.
Yes, I think she's weaker in the first movie than she is in this one.
And I think in the second one, she's especially towards the end of the movie, she has more of an arc. She has more to do, and I think she does a better job with it.
Yeah.
And so I think she kind of almost raises all ships for me a little bit.
Yeah. Yeah.
Because and also like the Cenobites are all great, especially Doug Bradley.
Yes.
But I think Dr. Chenard's fun as hell.
Yeah.
I think Julia's fun as hell.
Yeah, me too.
William Hope's fine. He's not in the movie long enough to really leave an impression. I've completely glossed over the detective when I was talking about the beginning of the movie because he doesn't matter.
Yeah.
So I think I can, and the guy who plays Frank, who comes back from the first one.
Yeah, he's great.
He's fun too.
He's great.
I really don't have an issue with any of the acting in this movie.
Okay, fair enough. And I do agree with you about Ashley Laurence, by the way. I think she really has stepped up her game from the first movie and is doing a way better performance here, and pretty much everything she's doing works for me in this movie.
Yeah. I'm kind of bummed out that she did come back for Hellraiser 6, where she is basically in the movie for like 5 minutes. And I'm a little bummed out that she didn't do any of the others, or rather the other Hellraiser movies didn't have good enough scripts for her to come back, probably, to make use of her. Because I think she's really good.
Yeah.
And she's good in this one.
Agreed.
And I would have liked to see more of her.
Yeah.
But I love the shit. She has some really good lines. She has great facial expressions too.
Yeah.
Because when she has to play like scared and manic and losing her mind, and you know, she's talking to the doctors in the beginning about what's going on or what she went through. I think she's really convincing. And good stuff.
Good stuff.
Good stuff.
And they go, Kyle and Kirsty go to Shenard's house to try and stop the hell raising that is happening all over that place.
And in the meantime, Chenard has amassed a number of victims for Julia.
Yes, which once again is just the plot of the first movie. Instead of telling it to you, now we're just doing it.
And
which is person without skin has person who worships them sexually, bringing them people for them to kill and steal skin from. And I'm like, okay, yes, I saw Hellraiser 1. Am I getting something different? And then eventually, I fucking do and it rocks, to be clear.
Well, what you're getting, first of all, is more bodies in a room hanging from chains.
Right.
And that's cool.
Yes, yeah. So
and also the movie doesn't bother to show them all coming in, which again is a bit of a plot hole because it seems like Kyle's probably been gone for 10 hours. I don't know how Chenard got all these people into his house. Again, I think he probably drove back to the asylum before Kyle got there.
Yeah.
And just grabbed a bunch of patients.
Maybe he just had even more patients in his house already. Like he has some in the basement of the hospital, but the really, really special cases he's just got in his home. Or maybe they were not patients and he just has a bunch of ladies in a dungeon. Who knows? But for this express purpose, maybe because he's been planning this for a while. All right, bring up the dungeon women. Their time has come. So Kyle and Kirsty show up here, and Kyle is very quickly out of this movie.
Yeah,
because they're
Julia has her skin back.
Yes,
basically.
She gets her skin back.
And then Kyle wanders off. He's like, stay here in the Cenobite study, the Cenobite library, and look through all of the textbooks to find relevant things that might come into the third act of the movie.
Surely leaving you in this room full of cursed artifacts is safe.
That's where she finds a photo of Doug Bradley in the military outfit.
Yes, yeah.
Which will come back in the third act.
Yeah.
And he's like, I'm gonna go explore the rest of this weird house, and runs into Julia, and
in a room full of chained up corpses.
Yes,
some of which look really good.
Yeah,
and some of which look like decorations that you could buy at Home Depot in late September. There are a few of these hanging bodies where I'm like, that one looks like ass. but to be fair, there were probably budget restrictions, and the ones that they show in close-up always look really fucking good. There's this one really horrific looking one, and I love that they sometimes have it in the shot, and then sometimes just have the shadow that this one is casting on the wall, and its silhouette is like emaciated and horrifying, and it's like really good use of this one specific hanging body that they have.
And I like the camera work too, during one of these sequences where we just see like the first body and maybe the second one, and then the camera slowly pans throughout the rest of the room and we see there are more of them.
Yeah.
I think that was really, really well done shot.
Yeah, there's like at least a dozen of them. There's like a bunch.
Yeah, they're the only things in the room.
She's been going through these at a rate of like one per hour.
Chenard is like, well, I have this spare room, this spare master bedroom that I'm not doing anything with. And I also have a bunch of these chains and meat hooks lying around.
Again, I think he's been planning this for a while. Somehow he's in his Cenobite research, he has learned that this is a thing he'll have to do when he reanimates someone who went to hell or whatever. So he's like, well, I'm going to need chains and meat hooks. I'm going to need a bunch of ladies.
Maybe those people have been there the whole time.
Yeah,
Not
maybe.
like living in his house, but like hanging on the hooks.
Oh, yeah. Ooh.
Yeah.
That's horrifying.
That's another movie. That sounds fun.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So then Julia is talking to Kyle here. He's basically like, I am in a room full of dead bodies. What the fuck is going on? And she's like, hey, do you want to make out with me? and he's like, okay. And she sticks her hand into the back of his head. And that is the end of Kyle, who seemed like he was going to be a major character in this movie and is dead within the first like 50 minutes, which I actually kind of like.
Yeah, I think so too.
I kind of like that it's like, oh, this guy is like our male kind of secondary protagonist to Kirsty in this movie, which the first movie in the third act also had one with the boyfriend, right? And it's like, no, this guy's fucking dead meat. Like, this movie is about Kirsty, which it's like, strong choice. I appreciate it.
Yeah, I like it too.
And it gets another body to the body count of this movie, which I also appreciate.
Mm-hmm. So Kirsty runs into Julia. There's I like a lot of the lines in this movie. There are a couple that are a little too silly, and I still kind of like them. So early, at some point, Kirsty's doing this, like, she's talking about like fairy tales, and are there bad fairy tales? And it comes back here where Julia says, like, Julia runs into Kirsty and she's like, "Take your best shot, Snow White."
I sort of like that, where she's like, the rules have changed. I'm not just the wicked stepmother. I'm the evil queen. So come on. Yes, I kind of really like all that stuff. It's very campy and silly and stupid, but again, I think that's the tone I want from this movie. So when it's fully leaning into that in moments like that, I'm like, yes.
There's some of the campy and silly and stupid stuff is also cool.
Yeah.
I don't think that line is campy, silly, and stupid and also cool. I kind of think it's campy, silly, and stupid and a little lame, but I still like it.
I find it charming. Yeah.
This movie stirs up many conflicting emotions within me.
Anyway, so I like that, by the way, after doing the I'm the evil queen spiel, she knocks Kirsty out by backhanding her once.
Yeah.
Which is pretty cool. She just slaps the consciousness out of her.
Despite the fact that she didn't have skin a couple hours ago, I guess she's got
she got plenty.
She's got
she's got
strength.
Skin to spare now. It's all in her arm muscles. When Kirsty wakes up, Channard and Julia have Tiffany from the psych ward and are having her solve the lament configuration. Because what Channard wants is pleasure and pain beyond his mortal understanding. So he's got to get the fucking Cenobites here so that they can rip him apart with chains and he can finally nut.
Yep. So she opens the puzzle box and all my friends show up.
Yep. It's the whole crew.
It's the gang. The
Chatterer,
gang's back.
Pinhead, Butterball, the girl one. They're all here. And I like I really like the line because this movie, like the first movie, the Cenobites don't show up for a while. We've covered an hour of the movie at this point. When the Cenobites finally show up, it's like the 52-minute mark ish when the Cenobites finally enter this movie, which is pretty similar to the first one. And I like that they always make this huge entrance. I love all the shit that they repeat from the first one with the walls opening up and there being kind of these like brick hallways with the cobwebs inside and like the light coming through them. And I love the first like lines of dialogue that the Cenobites have. The Cenobites come through and they're like sharpening their knives and getting ready to tear Tiffany apart. And Pinhead's the last one to show up and he just goes, "No!" And then the female Cenobite goes, "No!" And he goes, "No!" and he says, it is not hands that call us. It is desire." Which I just love all of that shit.
Doug Bradley fucking rocks.
His voice is really cool. Do they modulate it?
I think they do.
Okay, yeah. Because it's like really deep. But his performance is great, as always, as this character. And like anytime the Cenobites actually show up and are hanging out in a Hellraiser movie, I'm like, oh yeah, this is why I like these. So yeah, it's cool. And they decide not to tear Tiffany apart because they're really here for Channard, who has escaped and has gone with Julia into hell while the Cenobites were distracted by Tiffany.
Yeah, he's gone into the labyrinth.
Yes.
Where we will be spending the remainder of the film.
Yes, in a matte painting and one hallway.
Yes! Let's just talk about it now.
Yeah. I know you have a lot of thoughts about this.
I love the matte painting.
Yeah.
And I love the one hallway so much.
Yeah.
I clocked it the first time I saw it. It's so easy to tell. I think the matte painting's actually legitimately a really good matte painting.
Yeah.
That's the one matte painting they got though.
Yeah.
And they do that a bunch.
And anytime they're not doing the big aerial shot of the labyrinth, which is the really good map painting you're talking about, if someone is standing outside in the labyrinth, it's kind of just a vaguely blue background behind them, like kind of a grayish blue sky behind them, and that's it.
Yeah.
Like it like looks like they're in front of like a school picture day background.
Yeah, the matte painting is kind of like MC Escher-esque, where there's like staircases and hallways and archways and all of these winding paths. And we never really get that sense from the actual physical set that the actors are standing in.
Yeah, correct.
Because also they had the budget for one hallway, and any time that a character walks down a hallway, there's a painted backdrop of more hallway, and then they'll turn a corner, and the scene will cut to that same hallway and the same backdrop.
It's pretty funny. And like I will say it's goofy, and you can tell that it was very cheap, and it is sort of ineffective in a way because of that. However, it also like weirdly kind of works, because from the map painting aerial shot that we get, it looks like all of these interconnected stairways and hallways are like virtually identical. And it's just this like twisted maze of like all of these hallways and staircases that do look the same. So because it's all the same hallway, it kind of does work on a weird level.
Yeah, when the scenes when like Kirsty's running through these hallways and she keeps coming to these turns, and we see the painted backdrops and stuff, it starts feeling repetitious and disorienting.
Yes.
And that's kind of the point.
Yeah, the disorientation is the thing that I was really, I think, hitting on.
Yeah.
Like hitting this time, watching it. I was like, oh yeah, because it's only one set, it does kind of disorient you as the viewer when it comes back, because you're like, wasn't I just here? And that's like also the feeling that the character is having. So yeah, it kind of works. They kind of,
how many like Star Trek episodes are like one hallway set,
right?
That they just add some different shit to,
or they'll like reuse a monster costume but like put hair all over it.
Sure, and I think like they don't necessarily they don't do a lot to make this one hallway feel different in this movie, but I'm kind of okay with it, and I think it's effective in its own way.
Yeah.
And sometimes it's just fun to see how a movie was made.
Yes.
And
boy, oh boy, can you tell in this movie.
Yeah, with that painted backdrop.
Yeah. Also, we have neglected to mention one very important thing, which Julia and Chenard. Well, first they wander through hell. We can't get to the Leviathan yet.
Yeah, so the labyrinth, this part of the movie is basically character wanders into room. Weird shit happens.
Okay, so I said that the guy slashing himself apart with that razor was my favorite scene in the first hour of the movie. Now that we've hit the hour mark and we are in hell, all of this is my favorite parts of the movie, literally from the point when they go into hell to the end of the movie, which is criminally like a third of the movie. But I fucking love when they enter hell and Chenard and Julia have this one interaction where he is like seeing people fucking.
Yeah, there's like an orgy thing happening.
And he's like, oh, it's everything I've ever dreamed of, is kind of like the look on his face where he's like, yes, this is exactly what I wanted. And like there's kind of this weird dreamlike effect with these fucking people where like the woman turns her head and it's just some lady, and then she turns it again and it's Julia. And then I love Tiffany, her fucking carnival fun house.
The carnival's cool.
Yes. And
I like there's she goes to the carnival, she goes into like the house of mirrors, she sees her mother. We get like glimpses of her backstory here and there, which is never really like comes together, but that's okay. And then there's a juggler who's like juggling eyeballs.
Yes, which is fantastic. And then Kirsty, I really love this scene with Kirsty and Frank, but that actually happens after the Chenard thing.
Yeah, it's after she meets the Cenobites. What happens first is she wanders into
she
wanders into like not the house from the first movie. I think it's like her her old house, and she sees a bunch of photos of like her real mom and her family, and then the photos all start leaking blood.
Yes.
And then the photos turned to Julia.
Yes, I like this very much as well.
And then she meets the Cenobites again.
Yeah.
Oh, and there's more bugs too. They really must have had a great relationship with their maggot guys and bug guys from the first one, because they're just finding excuses to have more of them in this movie.
They're just like, hey, you guys, in this scene, like, there's not actually going to be bugs, but this guy's hallucinating bugs, so let's just use the bugs here too. Hell, full of bugs, as we all know.
Which
hell is underground, bugs live underground.
I'm here for it, man. I'm here for it.
Me too. Yeah, so she meets the Cenobites here again, and they're like, "Oh, don't fucking try and trick us like last time."
Yeah, and I like that the director's choice to make this scene scary and intense is like, let's just spin the camera a bunch because it's just like medium shots of the Cenobites,
yes,
slowly rotating.
It does sort of. It was sort of reminding me of like a nu metal music video a little bit. And this is like pre-nu metal. This movie, but it's
the 80s. You got industrial, you know.
True. And I feel like
early industrial.
I feel like Hellraiser movies did influence nu metal music video aesthetics. But yeah, it was just I could totally imagine this being like in a Seether video or some shit. But yeah, they're being all Cenobite and intimidating to her here.
Pinhead's like, don't fuck with us again, but go have fun in the maze.
Yeah, they're basically like,
go play, child.
They're basically like, we are going to rip you apart and fuck you to death, as we Cenobites are known to do. However, you're in hell now, so you can just hang out for a little bit before we do that.
We have eternity to know your flesh.
Which is probably my favorite line in the movie. I love that line, and I love the way it's delivered. It's great. In a script that I think is often, not fantastically written. We have an eternity to know your flesh. Very good line. Really balances the camp and the horror in a way that I like.
Yeah. So we'll get to my favorite line because it's basically the next scene, which is where we go meet the evil geometric shape that runs hell.
the floating obelisk in the sky. Leviathan. Yeah.
Is a floating octahedron.
Yes.
That is like maybe one of my favorite depictions of the devil.
Yes.
In anything.
Yes, I do like Satan as like a big concrete spike. That is pretty cool. Not as cool as Satan as a tube of glowing green goo. However, almost as cool.
I think for me it's in kind of in the same category.
Yeah.
Like I think
you like this as much as Prince of Darkness Devil?
Yeah, I think so.
Yeah. I like Prince of Darkness Devil more, but like that's not a surprise to anybody who has heard our Prince of Darkness episode.
I wish it looked a little bit better.
Yeah.
Again, because we're using that matte painting a lot, and some of the effects that they do for Leviathan aren't great. But yeah, it's a really cool idea.
Like when it's shooting orbs later. But yeah, so also when Chenard sees the floating octahedron, is that what you said?
Yeah,
it
has 8 sides.
Okay, well, the nerd.
It's a Mars Volta album. That's why I know what it is.
Got it. Nerd. But
I'm sorry. We watched Willow last week because of your fucking ass.
You know what? Touche, good sir. Touche.
Suck my dick.
Yeah, I like when Chenard sees this thing. He's like, my God. And Julia says, no, mine. Which is a great response to someone saying, my God, in shock.
Yeah, this is my favorite line in the movie, where she goes, my God, the God that sent me back, the God I serve in this world and yours, the God of flesh, hunger, and desire, my God, Leviathan, Lord of the Labyrinth. And then we get ominous shot of evil shape floating in the sky
Yes.
as the music swells. I think that line is fucking awesome.
It is very fun, and she delivers it like in a very fun way, in a very fun scenery chewing villainous way.
I think I like her better in this one because she is just chewing scenery left and
yeah,
right.
same, agreed.
She's having the time of her life in this movie.
Yeah. And then she starts making out with Channard, and as she's kind of like seducing him, he's getting like caught in the Leviathan beam.
Yeah.
Which is like making him revisit all of his like most fucked up memories, it seems like, where it's like memories of him like cutting people open and torturing them. There's like a flash of him as a child like cutting someone open, and it's like all very like it's sort of artfully done. Like, this is again one of my favorite parts of the movie, because it's like all the hell shit where it's like this Leviathan Satan entity is like making you relive your sins.
And I like the effect that they do where he turns like photo negative.
Yeah, that's fun
and
too.
they do it a couple of times, and there's a couple times where it's in the same shot where he's photo negative and Julia's still in color.
Yes,
I think
like
that's
that.
really well done too.
I like that. So Julia's seducing him, and this is happening at the same time, and it's like kind of fucking with him. And Julia's like, "Oh, isn't this what you wanted?" And then this Cenobite creation chamber levitates up.
It's the Cenobite character creator screen.
Yes, levitates
for your Cenobite RPG
up to where they are, and she's like, "Into the chamber now, honey. Goodbye." And boy, oh boy, is this not one of my favorite parts of this movie? Because, or not, sorry, boy, oh boy, is this one of my favorite parts of this movie? Yeah. So she puts him in here and is basically like, you wanted to know, now you know. And razor wire goes down over his face. There's all these like fleshy things that he gets like locked into with like bone spikes on him and shit. This crazy penis tentacle goes into his mouth.
Yeah, he gets like injected
insane
with shit.
Yeah, it looks like it's sucking the blood out of him and then putting blue shit into him. It's very insane and cool and inventive and unique. Like, it doesn't look like things from other horror movies to me a lot, which is the thing I appreciated.
Yeah, there's a vaguely kind of biomechanical thing going on, but it doesn't feel like it's Giger or
right,
anything.
it's not like an Alien ripoff. There is some like body transformation horror stuff, but it doesn't feel very The Thing either.
Mm-hmm.
It kind of feels like this is occupying its own space in a way, and I'm like, I appreciate that.
It feels Hellraiser to me. Like what I think of as like my platonic ideal of a Hellraiser movie that kind of hasn't been made yet, as much as I like these first few movies.
Yeah.
It's really kind of like it's what I want from this franchise, is to go weird and fucked up and strange.
Yes. And the actor who plays Channard is like screaming his fucking head off while this is all happening. Like, the razor wire tightens around his face and neck, and this thing's like going into his mouth, and he's just like screaming, and he's covered in blood and shit. And to your point, like, yes, that's what I want from these movies. Like, that moment, I'm like, oh fuck yeah. It rules. And then like the little chamber like goes down, and we just don't see the rest of what happens to him yet. Mm-hmm. Right. And then this is where then we go catch up with Kirsty.
Yeah, Kirsty's wandered into Frank's goon cave.
It truly is his goon cave, because we learn he can't fuck in there. He can only be teased, which presumably just means he's pounding off constantly.
I wasn't really into this sequence when I saw this movie for the first time, because the first movie, I think, used sex in a really compelling thematic way. And in this movie, it just felt like we're just using sex again because that's what people expect from a Hellraiser movie.
Huh.
And it's just fun, and we'll just be horny because it's fun. Watching this last night, I love this scene.
Yeah, okay. Yep. That's where I'm
love this scene.
That's where I'm at with this scene. This is, so between the last scene that just happened where Channard goes into the chamber and then this scene, I was getting angry at this movie for only having like 20 minutes left of runtime by the point that these scenes are happening, because I'm like, this should be the beginning of the movie, and then I should watch 100 minutes of this. I didn't need the other fucking 50 minutes before, just give me all this, because I agree. I love this scene. I think it's fucking great.
I love so she sees like a stained glass window that's a flower that she associates with her house.
Yeah.
She opens the door and it's a church, and I love that, first of all. And then I love there's these like these beds, sort of.
They're
these,
like they're like morgue drawers.
Yeah.
Yeah. Where it's like there's like a stone archway, and there's like a bed, but also it's reminiscent of a drawer in a morgue that like slides out.
And they're also lit from within.
Yes.
Like there's the top of it's like frosted glass, and there's lights underneath it.
Yeah.
So it looks really cool. And they're sliding in and out. And there's what appears to be women under these thin white cloths having orgasms.
Yes, definitely not what appears to be women. There are definitely women under. Well, I mean, in the world of the movie, there's not actually women under the sheets, because she pulls one out and then there's nothing, or pulls one of the sheets off and there's nothing there. But like, they're definitely women, because we can fully see nipples through these sheets.
Oh yeah, that's fair.
Yeah,
that's yeah.
There's boobies and nipples and very female silhouettes. Yeah.
And I like the music cuts out too, and we
Yeah.
just hear them like moaning and stuff. It's
Yeah.
really good.
It's really creepy and weird. And like one slides out and then two slide out. And like Kirsty's looking at these like, what the fuck? And then she goes to lift one of the sheets, and then it's just not there. And which is a great moment. And it's like really tense, because she's like going for the sheet, and you're like, oh, what's gonna be under there? And then it's just nothing, which is a great like, it's not even a fake out. It's just like it keeps the tension going, because you're like, well, now what? You know?
The answer to that is Frank shows up and decides to be really rapey.
Yes, she turns around and like goes to this vanity and sees I am in hell, help me written on the vanity in lipstick. And then Frank appears and is like, did you get my message? Right? And she doesn't get it immediately, which is very funny to me, that she's not immediately like, oh, that you were the skinless guy that I saw. She's like, where's my father? And he basically has to spell it out for her, being like, I did that. And yes, then he is rapey towards his own niece, which is, more of the same from Frank. That's what we saw from him in the first Hellraiser film as well. This guy wants to fuck anything and everything, including blood relatives. Yeah, and so he's like being all creepy. Like you said before, the performance here from him is good.
Yeah, I think he's really good.
And I think this scene is like very disturbing and is the stuff that I like a lot from the first Hellraiser movie too, right? Where it gets into like, that weird like psychosexual territory.
Yeah, and this is Frank's hell is like, he has to live in here, and he has to see these women being pleasured, but he can't do anything about it. He can't fuck them because they're not there.
Yeah, so again,
he just has to
sit
there and crank it off. Just beat that hog raw.
I can't do anything actually kinky. I just have to fucking whack off like I'm some kind of plebeian. Sexual plebeian. And here the morgue drawers continue sliding out, and now the sheets have blood all over them, which is also very
that's really
creepy
cool
and fun.
Kirsty grabs one of them and throws it on like a torch, and then the whole room sets on fire, and then Frank gets angry and starts peeling his skin off in anger. He's like, you fucking bitch, I'm gonna rip my skin off because I'm so frustrated.
Fire is maybe also melting his skin off. It's sort of unclear what the fuck is happening.
Yeah, it is. I don't care. It's cool.
I agree that it is cool, and that I don't really care why it's happening, but it is definitely, at this point in the movie, I am thinking, I don't understand how this is occurring. But I do really enjoy it. And I fucking love the actor who plays Frank's delivery of, not my skin! Yeah, and he goes full muscle mode, the same way that we saw him in the first movie. And then Julia shows up and is like, oh, we having a little family reunion here? She also has found and captured Tiffany. And Frank's like, oh, what's up, babe? Come down here and give me a kiss.
Oh, hey, I wasn't expecting to see you here. How's it going?
Sorry that I murdered you at the end of the last movie. You're not still holding a grudge about that, are you?
Sorry that I manipulated you into bringing me back to life by killing people and then I stabbed you. That was a dick move on my part.
Do you want to come here so that I can fuck you? I've had an eternity in hell of just watching these sexy ladies under these sheets, and you wouldn't believe the blue balls I have right now. And so she comes down and she's like gonna it looks like they're gonna start making out. And then and then tell me what happens,
And then
David.
she rips his heart out.
His still beating heart.
And there's this glorious shot of her holding it up and grinning, this big old grin as it's still beating.
And she says, "Nothing personal, babe," which is very, very good. Yes, she has been Kalima Shakti Daying people's brains previously. This is a full Temple of Doom Kalima Shakti Day beating heart. I think Spielberg might have a case here, honestly, if he wants to take these guys to court. But yeah, Tiffany and Kirsty get the fuck out of there after seeing this.
Yeah, they wander back into the asylum, or what seems like it's the asylum, because now that the patients have, they're all, chained to different lament configurations in different ways, and they're, kind of messing with them and solving them, and they have, chains running from the lament configuration to, their face and stuff. It's really cool.
Yeah, it is cool.
We also check back in with Chenard, who wakes up and discovers that he's a Cenobite.
Yes.
And then a giant penis with a drill on it attaches to his head, and that will be his mode of transportation.
Yes.
He doesn't need legs anymore. This thing's just going to carry him around.
Yes. You also never see how it is doing that, which I actually kind of like.
Yeah.
It's is the penis going from the sky? Where does it connect to that it is doing this? You don't see if the top of the penis has wings and is flapping around or whatever. It just kind of is how he's levitating, and you never understand where it's coming from. And I'm like, that kind of rocks.
Yeah. Oh, I also should mention when I completely forgot this, and it's very important. When Kirsty and Tiffany run back into the asylum, there's wind blowing. I guess hell's having a windy day or something.
Yeah, windy day in hell.
Gust winds. And Julia grabs onto Kirsty.
Oh yeah.
And her skin gets ripped off.
Yes, yeah. So Julia grabs onto Tiffany.
Oh, Tiffany.
Because the lament configuration has turned also into an octahedron. At some point in the hell sequence, the lament configuration transforms into the same shape as the Leviathan, and it gets dropped at one point, and then Julia picks it up. So she's got it. And during this windy part, Tiffany is reaching out for the lament configuration octahedron, but then Julia grabs her hand, and then Kirsty grabs her other hand to try and wrestle her away, and this makes her skin fly off.
And we just see a flap of her skin in a pile on the floor.
Yes, it doesn't look fantastic.
It does not.
But I also really like it.
Yeah.
And the effect of her skin splitting down her back does look good.
Yeah, that shit looks good.
But yeah, so here, as David was saying, Chenard wakes up. He's got the fucking penis thing that is a lobotomy drill that goes into his head. And to think, I hesitated.
Oh, this is actually pretty awesome.
It turns out being a Cenobite is really fucking rad.
Oh, I had all of my doctor puns planned for this occasion, and now I get to use them. Which he does when he bursts through a window in the asylum and goes, "The doctor is in."
The doctor is in.
To scare Kirsty and Tiffany. And then there's these snakes that shoot out of his palms, and they're stop motion.
Yes. All of his tentacle stuff is all stop motion, and I love stop motion. End of sentence.
Yeah.
Stop motion always fucking rocks.
And they all have different things that sort of pop out of the ends. Sometimes there's surgical blades. At one point he's gesturing to Tiffany and a finger pops out of them, and then another one is like a flower.
Yeah.
Awesome shit.
Yeah. There's one, I think in this scene, which is the first time you see them, where one of them is like, it looks like a snake with like a mouth.
Mhm.
The mouth opens, there's an eyeball in the mouth, and then a blade shoots through the eyeball. The eyeball explodes, and the blade starts spinning and sprouts a bunch of other blades. And I was like, this is like insane, like Phil Tippett level galaxy brain stop motion shit, where it's like, how do you even think of that?
Yeah, I think the stop motion in terms of like the animation itself
is not Phil Tippett level.
is not great, but the level of creativity that's on display with how this is, all the different things that are popping out of this guy is really cool.
It just looks bananas. Like it's insane that they even thought of this. And yeah, he keeps doctor punning here. They're basically Kirsty.
I recommend amputation.
Kirsty and Tiffany pretty much immediately run away when they see him, right?
Yeah, and they end up back in the Cenobite swinging chains room.
Yes.
And
because we're in hospital hell. So, you're running down a hospital hallway, you open a door that you think is a janitor's closet, and oops, it's full of Cenobites.
So, what did you think of the labyrinth, Kirsty? Any suggestions? Pretty cool, right? Would you mind taking this brief 5-minute survey to give us your feedback on the labyrinth experience? Make sure you stop by the churro stand on your way out. Kirsty, would you mind leaving us a quick Yelp review about your experience in the labyrinth? Spread the word on Twitter. We're trying to get more visitors around Halloween. Make sure to tag us on your posts on Facebook if you took any photos in the labyrinth.
So Kirsty hands Pinhead the photo of Doug Bradley in the uniform, and she's like, "Hey, recognize this?" He's like, "No, I don't." Oh shit!
I've never seen this motherfucker in my life.
Yeah. And he then has Pinhead has an identity crisis, and then all the other Cenobites start having an identity crisis, and then Dr. Chenard shows up while the Cenobites are still computing their past human lives.
And Pinhead's like,
"Oh, I guess we'll try our one trick, which is the shooting chains thing again."
Okay. So a problem that I have with this scene, which I do like this scene. A problem I have with it is Chenard shows up. The Cenobites are in the process of like remembering that they were human. And the Cenobites are basically like, we're not going to hand over or help you kill Kirsty and Tiffany. And Chenard says,
"Oh, good, a fight."
And then they shoot the chains at him. He cuts the chains, and he one-shots all 4 of these Cenobites in like 2 seconds.
Yeah.
And I'm this is not a fight. I was promised a fight by the script.
The snakes that shoot out of his hands, they all cut the chains, which is really cool.
Yeah.
And then they all die. They all get basically stabbed.
He shoots spears out of his hands.
Yeah.
And it like the one goes through, I think 2 of them get the spears in the neck. The female Cenobite definitely gets a spear in the neck. Butterball, I think, gets it in the head. Oh, yeah, Butterball, I think, gets it in the head, and then Chatterer gets it in the chest, I think. But they all just got one-shotted by spears. And I'm like, you have this awesome fucking Dr. Chenard Cenobite design. You have all these 4 iconic Cenobites that we already know and love. You are telling me that they are going to face off, and instead of that, I get one moment where Dr. Chenard gets chained up, and then that is immediately undone. And then 3 people get speared, and 1 guy gets his throat slit, and end of scene. And I'm like, why would you promise me this and not deliver it? And I know the answer to that question is they didn't have the money to do a Cenobite battle.
Yeah, you want an anime fight at the end of this movie?
Not necessarily. I would just appreciate it if we got to see at least a little bit of hell powers from the other 4 Cenobites. Because all we see is the chains. And they've already used that trick before. And I'm like, show me what fucking Chatterer can do. You know? Like, Dr. Chenard has these snakes that come out of his hands. Pinhead can summon the chains. What do the other fuckers do?
And make it double. Team Cenobite is blasting off again.
Maybe maybe a female Cenobite. Maybe she can like shoot acid out of her throat vagina or something. Show me that.
She like rubs the clit of her throat vagina.
and it squirts acid.
Squirt is actually piss.
But the other thing is, so they all get fucking stabbed by these spears, and we see them all fall over and turn back into their human selves.
Yes.
So the female is
A
a
lady.
girl. Butterball's a fat guy.
Yes.
Chatterer gets pinned to a spinning pillar,
Yeah.
which will come back.
Mhm.
And Chatterer's a kid,
He's a child. Yes.
which is kind of awesome.
Which we do notice. There is a reaction shot of Tiffany noticing that Chatterer is a kid, and I do like that moment of her being like, "Oh, like that could happen to me. Like kids like me can become Cenobites,"
Mhm.
which is you kind of see her reckoning with that for a second, which I was like, "Oh, I like that."
And then Pinhead turns back into Doug Bradley
Yeah.
before he gets killed, and it's funny knowing that Pinhead is just the most British-looking man you've ever seen.
Which, to be fair, he is portrayed by Doug Bradley, so he does actually just look like that.
That is just Doug Bradley.
In real life, yeah. But it is funny that he's just like, yeah.
He's just tea and crumpets British.
he's yeah. He's a God Save the Queen ass motherfucker.
And then he gets his throat slit.
Yeah, and just goes a bunch of times and then falls over dead, and I'm like, again, feels a little anticlimactic to me.
I like the moment I like his performance when he's choking.
Me too.
And when he gets his throat slit.
I just
think
wish
that's
there was
good.
more to it. I said this in my first review of this movie. It landed better for me this time, but I'm still not totally a fan of the Cenobites were all just humans like you once, and if you remind them of that, you can make them good thing. Just because it's like, I don't know if I need that in this movie. And I feel like there was another way that we could have Chenard and the OG Cenobites face off here, where the OG Cenobites could basically be like, you can't have Kirsty, she's ours, right? And Chenard could be like, no, I want to torture them, and I'm gonna fucking... And you just have the Cenobites beefing over who gets to torture and kill them.
Mm-hmm.
And you still could have had the scene without the like, and they were all nice people once, and then they got turned into demons, but if you talk to them and tell them that they used to be good, you can like get them on your side. It's just like, I think it's kind of lame.
You brought me a photo from my high school yearbook.
I will say though, when Pinhead's looking at that picture, Doug Bradley has hair in that picture, Pinhead famously bald. I did relate to that moment because that's how I feel looking at pictures from before I shaved my head. Like pictures of me with hair.
You're
It is
like,
kind of
I
that
don't
moment of like,
recognize that guy.
it is kind of, yeah, that moment of like, I don't even know who this is. Wait, something is stirring deep in my soul.
Is that your weakness? To be reminded that you were once
that I
had
had once had hair. Yeah, probably. I probably have the same weakness as Pinhead, where it would render me also kind of like catatonic and impotent in a fight if someone just showed me a picture of what I used to look like. Look how skinny you were. Look at that head of hair. I'd be like, oh no. But yeah, I don't know. How do you feel about the Cenobites being humans?
I think it's fine.
Okay.
I like that we don't get a ton
Yeah.
of the backstory.
Yeah.
I like some of the little like tidbits that we get that like somehow Doug Bradley's a soldier in like World War I or World War II.
Yeah.
And somehow on his travels he came across this thing. We don't really know much else, and they dip into it a little bit in 3, but they don't even go into it that deep in 3 either. And then 4 is the story of the Lament configuration.
Mm-hmm.
And Pinhead pops in here and there, but it's not really about him. And then the other 2 that I've seen are just, again, 7 ripoffs. Weirdly, the newest Hellraiser movie directed by David Bruckner, the like reboot with I believe her name is Jamie Clayton as Pinhead.
That sounds right.
That feels like it has the most like backstory and lore in it. And it's actually pulling a lot from this movie, which I really liked when they
Nice.
started digging into some of that stuff. But it's like just enough. You don't need much more than the movie's giving you.
I did see in the trailer for that movie, the 2022 one, that Leviathan does make an appearance.
He does.
Which is fun. Anyway.
I was very happy to see that when he showed up.
There's my boy.
there's my favorite floating devil shape.
Yes. One of my favorite geometric shapes.
But yeah, I think I wish like these movies made a little bit more use of the Cenobites, but I'm also like, the Cenobites aren't even really my favorite thing about these.
Yeah. I sort of agree. Like, it's like I said, the moment kind of an hour into this movie and the first Hellraiser movie where the Cenobites show up is such kind of like a powerful like event moment in the movie where I'm like, no, yeah, I don't need them showing up earlier in the movie than that because it wouldn't have the same impact if they were just here the whole time, you know? I kind of like that the movie makes you wait for them a little bit and uses them in small doses.
Yeah. Kirsty and Tiffany run back to the asylum, and then Tiffany's like, oh, we got to go back. And so we get more scenes of them walking through the same hallway side.
Yes, so
she has to go back and fight. We have mostly mute. She starts talking at this point.
Yes, okay. So this is the thing that I want to touch on.
Yeah,
this
hone in
briefly.
on this.
Yes, because we've been presented with this character as she does not speak. She's like traumatized by unknown past and doesn't speak and only solves puzzles. And then, like you said, she does say that they have to go back to the labyrinth because she has started speaking when she sees Dr. Chenard for the first time, and he says the doctor is in a little bit ago.
Yeah.
The first line that she has in this movie is, oh shit. which really got a huge laugh out of me this time when I realized that was the first this character speaks.
Mm-hmm.
And then she just is talking for the rest of the movie. Which I really, really love. That it's like just seeing Dr. Chenard as a Cenobite is the thing that like makes her able to speak again. And her reaction is like, what the fuck? Yeah, it's great.
Yeah,
so, yeah,
and we get more shots of the glorious hallway set. That's what I like.
Yeah.
And the end of this movie is the weird, quiet girl in your class who likes solving puzzles facing off against Satan, who is a floating shape.
Yes, and it turns out if you just solve a puzzle correctly, you can defeat the Lord of Darkness. Yeah, she picks up the lament configuration from Julia's skinned, her husk on the floor where they left it, and then they go out into the matte painting and start. She starts fucking with this thing.
Chenard shows up and he advances on them, and he's going to back Tiffany into one of those Cenobite boxes.
Yeah.
And then Julia comes back and gives Chenard a big old kiss to let Tiffany solve the rest of the puzzle box.
Yes, I love that Chenard is so horny for Julia that he immediately stops paying attention to Tiffany as soon as Julia shows up. He's like, yes, I'm going to turn this small child into a Cenobite as my master command. What the fuck? Hachi-machi.
Oh, the redhead's back.
I'm horny as fuck now. And just completely ignores Tiffany. And Julia gives him a smooch.
Mm-hmm.
And that gives Tiffany enough time to fucking solve the cube.
Mm-hmm.
And then the obelisk thing starts going fucking bananas because you solved the puzzle in the presence of Satan, which makes Satan turn into a cube.
Yeah. Chenard gets his head ripped off by the penis thing.
So what happens here, and the cinematic language of the moment is very clear, even though the logic is not.
No.
Which is, he shoots the snake things out of his hands to try and kill Tiffany. The blades get stuck in the ground, in the stone, in front, between Tiffany's legs, and don't actually hit her. And then he can't unstick his hand blades. And the penis head thing is trying to move him somewhere else. And the result is, I guess because the razor wire had already sort of weakened the joint between his lower jaw and upper jaw maybe, his head is ripped in half.
Yep.
It's not even his head is ripped off. His head is ripped in half.
Yeah, it's pretty sick.
Which rips. It's great.
Yeah, that's awesome.
Really good sound effect when this happens too, and like all this black goop shoots out from his head, because like some of the Cenobites have red blood when Channard kills the other ones earlier, but Channard's blood is like black. It's very fun.
And then I think this is another situation where Hell suddenly gets a gust of wind. Tiffany like falls off of the side of the platform.
Sorry, I must correct you because it is hilarious. The reason she falls off the platform is not because a gust of wind knocks her off. It's because she's looking at Channard's half-severed head, and she's in shock for a second, and then she realizes, I think, what the fuck she just witnessed. Like, her brain processes it, and she screams herself off the edge.
Oh, okay.
because she's like so horrified by what she just witnessed that she screams so hard she falls.
and Julia grabs her, and we hear Kirsty's voice coming out of Julia's mouth, and she's like, "Trust me."
Yeah.
And she lifts her back up, and then Kirsty Cotton peels off Julia's skin, and she's just like, we see Ashley Laurence just covered in blood, smiling.
Yep.
So I love that completely off screen while Tiffany is being attacked by Channard, right?
Yeah.
Kirsty gets an idea. She runs back through the labyrinth to find Julia's skin, has enough time to like put it on sort of convincingly, and then run back.
And put on her clothes too. She's also wearing the clothes Julie was wearing.
And the earrings and shit.
Yeah. And so she like does all of this in what if none of the cuts are deceptive and there were no time jumps where maybe Dr. Channard was actually menacing her for 45 minutes. If that's not the case, this all happened in about 90 seconds. Which is batshit insane and doesn't make any fucking sense. And you know what? I will allow it because this is the part of this movie I love.
And then Leviathan starts shooting energy balls, which don't look great.
They look bad. Also, it's funny because he's shooting 1 million of these energy balls, and they're flying everywhere except where Kirsty and Tiffany are. They're running away from these energy balls for what feels like quite a while, and these energy balls are constantly zapping past them, like 2 at a time, like you see so many of them.
And they like start going through the labyrinth, and the energy balls are like turning through the hallways and chasing them through the labyrinth.
Yes, and then
but they don't get hit.
But they never get hit, which is very funny. And then once they get to the end of the hallway and like go to run back into the asylum, the energy balls start hitting things in the asylum room, and you see that these energy balls are like making shit explode, like they're really fucking things up that they hit. And it's like, wow, really lucky Tiffany and Kirsty just happened to never be in the path of one of these things. It's a much less tense and scary version of the Hellraiser 1 thing where that Muppet is chasing them through the hallways.
Yeah.
Because it's like the Muppet thing, there's only one of it, right? And you understand if you outrun it, like you outrun it. And it visually looks a lot better.
And you can also see the rig behind it that's pushing it through the hallway.
Correct. Which is campy and charming.
Yeah.
These energy ball things are just like a lower rent version of that, where it's like we didn't have to spend as much money. We're basically doing the same thing. And it's not great.
They make it back to the asylum before the portal closes, and that's the end of the movie, except for a little stinger scene where the same movers from the first movie are moving the bloody mattress out of Channard's house, and a guy gets grabbed by someone through the mattress, and then an evil pillar with faces on it and chains and knives and shit,
and a baby doll with a sewn shut mouth.
The baby doll with a sewn shut mouth that we saw during the carnival scene with Tiffany. Pinhead's face is on there. It's this really silly effect of it popping up through the mattress and then spinning around, and then it stops on the face of the homeless guy from the first one with bugs on his face, and he opens his eyes and his mouth, and he goes, "What's your pleasure, sir?" And that's the end of Hellbound Hellraiser 2.
Yes, that's the movie.
That's the motion picture.
It's a fun little Hellraiser will continue moment, you know?
Yeah. Stay tuned for the next installment.
Yep.
Justice.
Yes.
The first time you saw this movie.
Yeah.
You thought it was kind of bad.
Yeah.
What I want to know is, do you like it? But more importantly, Do you think it's the greatest movie ever made?
David, I was confounded by this movie to some extent the first time I watched it, where I was like, I don't really know what this thing is going for, and if it's going for what I think it is, I don't think it's succeeding. Revisiting it, much like revisiting the first Hellraiser eventually did for me, made it work better for me. I did like this more this time than I did the first time. These movies are confusing to me because there is so much shit in them that I genuinely fucking love. Like all the campy, goofy shit, the insane stop motion effects in this one, all of the times that they're actually successfully delving into like the psychosexual stuff, that's all very fun. And yet I cannot get past the fact that this movie spends 1 hour recapping the first movie and then doing the first movie.
Okay, you're changing the time here. You said 25 minutes before.
Okay, 25 minutes recapping. Then
which is still wrong.
Then another go back and watch it and look at the timestamp. When we're 25 minutes in, nothing has happened. All that we've done is show clips from the first one, and then people have talked about the first one. But then like there's another like 35 minutes after that first 25 where we're just doing Hellraiser 1 again. Not talking about it, doing it, where it's Chenard getting Julie victims and her stealing skin. And I kind of can't get over that because I'm like, what you have in the third act of this movie is so wonderful and so special and so creative and insane and campy, and I love every single second of it once Tiffany solves the puzzle box and the Cenobites show up. And everything before that, I'm like, I wish we had done almost anything else with the first hour of this movie. There are ways that second installments in horror franchises have handled that leagues better than this movie. I'm thinking of stuff like Evil Dead 2, which does summarize the first Evil Dead and even redoes the first Evil Dead. They basically just do Evil Dead 1 as the first 5 minutes of Evil Dead 2, right? But it's like, then we're on to new shit. Then Ash is battling his own evil hand and shit, you know? And like Nobody Sleeps in the Woods Tonight Part 2, which we talked about on this podcast, another way better example of that being executed, where it's like, we just kind of drop into the story where the other one left off. And even you, a person who had not seen the first one when we covered that movie, got it, you know? And I'm like, I kind of can't abide that we spend so much fucking time rehashing Hellraiser 1 in this movie, and that we don't get to the meat of it, which, to be clear, once we do, I fucking love. And for that reason, this is 1/3 of the greatest movie ever made, which makes it not the greatest movie ever made. David, is Hellbound Hellraiser 2 the greatest movie ever made?
Justice, for that, I have to go to the envelope. And my eyes see that Hellbound Hellraiser 2 is the greatest movie ever made.
That was an insane moment at this year's Oscars.
It's so cool. I love him. I'm going to be so sad when Pacino finally shuffles off this mortal coil. Yes, Justice, Hellbound Hellraiser 2 is Hellraiser 2.
Hellraiser.
Hellraiser 2.
We're raising hail.
Is the greatest movie ever made. This has been the the reverse conversation that we're gonna have whenever we do Event Horizon.
Yes.
This is my Event Horizon.
Yes. In some ways, this was also the reverse Prince of Darkness conversation. Because this is a movie that, to be clear, I don't hate. It maybe sounded like I did, but I like this movie.
Mm-hmm.
Which I guess is true of you with Event Horizon, too.
Yeah, I mean, it's your thing about, like, you want to like it more than you do.
Yes.
And that's how I feel about Event Horizon. We'll see whenever we do that episode.
Yeah.
Anyway, this movie is the little engine that could. And every time I see them reuse that same hallway set with that same backdrop, I'm just like cheering for the little engine to get up the hill. 'Cause it's clear that their vision is much grander than their budget will allow.
Yeah.
But all that being said, I think this is really creative and fun as hell. It's a great counterpoint to the first movie. It's also a great like companion piece to the first movie. As someone who watched them back to back, I kind of think they form a complete story. And you don't really get all of it by watching the first Hellraiser. I think this is kind of answers the questions of the first Hellraiser by exploring the labyrinth, giving us just a little bit more about the Cenobites.
Yeah.
It takes a little long to get there. I don't think it spends as much time rehashing the first movie as you think it does. And even when we do start having like Chenard and Julia luring people and killing people and just doing the Frank and Julia thing again, I like it. I think it's fine. I think it's fun. Yeah, I'm okay that we're doing it again. There's some fun visuals and fun moments and fun lines that we get. And I have a lot of fun with the performances. It's just so clear that they wanted to do something big and bold and crazy and out there, and they didn't quite get there, but it's so charming and fun in the process of watching it. It's my shitty little movie.
Yeah.
It's my shitty little
Yes.
deformed child that I love with all my heart. So yeah, fuck you. Hellbound Hellraiser 2, greatest movie ever made.
Yeah. You know what? Fair enough. I'm glad you like this movie as much as you do, even though I do not.
I'm glad we talked about it.
Yeah, me too.
Justice, what are we talking about next week?
So next week, this might be a surprise to you because I rearranged the schedule because we were supposed to have a guest next week who I have not reached out to ask if they wanted
That's
to do
why
the show.
I asked what we're watching next week.
Yes. So I, because I haven't reached out to our prospective guest yet, I rearranged the schedule. So David, next week, we're going from a David pick to a Justice pick. We're apparently taking turns here because we've gone Willow Hellbound, and now we're going back to my camp to talk about a movie that I have been really wanting to rewatch and really wanting you to watch so that I can talk to you about it, because it is one of the movies in recent memory that has left the biggest impression on me upon first watch, and that is the film A Girl Walks Home Alone at Night, the Iranian vampire Western romance. A Girl Walks Home Alone at Night. So that'll be fun for us to talk about. How it's really, really hot when a powerful, dangerous woman protects a sensitive man. And that's all I'm going to say about it because I don't want to spoil it for
It's
you.
a nice counterpoint to this week where we talk about a very powerful, hot, dangerous woman without skin.
Yes.
Mixed out with a horny doctor. Cool. I'm looking forward to watching it.
Yeah.
Looking forward to talking about it with you. And looking forward to the continued support of our loyal and wonderful listeners. Thank you guys so much for tuning in every week. Continue to spread the word about the show. And we will keep bringing you quality podcasts just like this one, which are basically two people with a tenuous grasp of the English language blithering on about a movie for 2 hours. In the meantime, we hope you take care of yourselves. We love you all so much. And as always,
Later, dipshits!
We hope you enjoyed this episode of The Greatest Movie Ever Made. Please remember to leave us a rating and a review, and to subscribe to the show wherever you listen. We appreciate you supporting the show and spreading the word. Tell your friends to listen, tell your enemies to listen, tell your mom to listen. If your neighbor has an unsecured Bluetooth speaker, connect to it and play an episode. You can follow us on social media at TGMEM_podcast, and if you've got a movie that you want us to talk about, send us an email at thegreatestmoviepodcast@gmail.com.